Let me start by saying I'm not someone who goes looking for trouble. When my husband, Chris, and I bought our home in Willow Creek Estates, we thought it was the perfect place to settle down. The neighborhood seemed peaceful. Rows of tidy houses with neatly trimmed lawns, kids riding bikes on sunny afternoons, and neighbors waving hello as they passed by. It felt like the kind of community where you could truly belong. But there was one thing that came along with living here: the Homeowners Association, or HOA. At first, I didn't think much of it. We got a big binder filled with rules about things like mailbox colors, lawn height, and holiday decorations. Honestly, I skimmed through most of it while sipping coffee on our porch, thinking it was all just part of keeping the neighborhood nice and orderly. Little did I know how much those rules would come to define life here, and not in a good way. The person running the show was Karen, the HOA president. She wasn't just any regular neighbor. She carried herself like she owned the entire subdivision. From the moment we met her at the welcome meeting, I could tell she took her role very seriously. Dressed in a crisp blazer and armed with a clipboard, she greeted us with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Welcome to Willow Creek," she said sweetly, handing over the massive rulebook. "We pride ourselves on maintaining harmony here." Harmony. Sure, sounded great. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's version of harmony meant everyone following her rules without question. Still, I tried to push aside my unease. Maybe I was overthinking things. After all, what harm could a few guidelines do? Then came the day I noticed something odd. I was out in the backyard watering the plants when I spotted two men in bright orange vests walking around near the edge of our property. They were holding measuring tapes and marking spots with little flags. Curious, I walked over to ask what they were doing. One of them glanced up and gave me a polite nod. "HOA project," he said casually. "Just checking boundaries." Boundaries? What boundaries? My heart sank a little. Why would the HOA need to check boundaries on our asterisk land? I thanked him and went back inside, my mind racing. That night, I told Chris about it. He shrugged it off like it was no big deal. "Probably routine," he said. "Don't worry about it." But I couldn't stop worrying. Something about the whole situation felt off. The next morning, I decided to dig into the paperwork from when we bought the house. Flipping through pages of contracts and disclosures, I stumbled across a section labeled Easement Agreement. It mentioned that certain parts of our property could be used for community improvements approved by the HOA. My stomach twisted into knots. How had I missed this before? And why hadn't anyone explained it to us more clearly? Suddenly, Karen's comment about maintaining harmony took on a darker meaning. Was this what she meant? Using private property however they pleased, as long as it served the so-called greater good? I wanted to believe I was jumping to conclusions. Surely, nothing drastic would happen. But deep down, I knew better. This was only the beginning. Whatever the HOA had planned, I doubted it would end well for us. A few weeks passed, and I tried to put the whole easement thing out of my mind. Maybe those surveyors had just been doing routine checks, like Chris said. Maybe nothing would come of it. But then, one Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of hammering. At first, I thought it was coming from somewhere far away. Maybe a neighbor fixing their fence or working on a home improvement project. But as I pulled back the curtains and looked outside, my heart sank. There, right at the edge of our backyard, were construction workers. They were busy building something. A playground. A full-blown playground, complete with swings, a slide, and even a jungle gym. "What is going on?" I muttered under my breath, still in my pajamas. I grabbed a robe, slipped on some slippers, and marched outside. The workers barely glanced at me as I approached. "Excuse me," I called out, raising my voice over the noise of drills and hammers. One of them finally turned around, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, clearly unbothered by my obvious frustration. "Yes, actually," I said, trying to keep my tone calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "What are you doing on my property?" He blinked, looking genuinely confused for a moment. Then he gestured toward a clipboard lying on a nearby table. "This is an HOA-approved project," he explained. "Didn't you get the notice?" "Notice? What notice?" My head spun as I stared at him, dumbfounded. No one had told us about this. Not a letter, not an email, not even a knock on the door. How could they build something on our asterisk land without so much as a warning? I stormed back inside, fuming, and immediately called Karen. She answered after a couple of rings, her voice smooth and polished, like she'd been expecting my call. "Oh, Grace," she said, almost too sweetly. "Didn't you see the email we sent last month? We decided the neighborhood needed more communal spaces. Your property seemed ideal." "My property?" I repeated, incredulous. "You can't just build something on someone's land without permission." Karen sighed dramatically, as if she were dealing with a stubborn child. "Technically, it falls within the HOA easement zone," she replied. "And since it benefits the community, you really should be thanking us." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Easement zone. Those two words hit me like a punch to the gut. I remembered reading about it in the fine print when we bought the house, but I'd never imagined it could lead to something like this. "It doesn't matter what's in the contract," I snapped, my voice rising. "You don't just barge onto someone's property and start building things without telling them. This isn't okay." Karen's tone shifted, growing colder. "Grace, let's not make this personal. The playground is already halfway done, and it's going to be wonderful for families in the neighborhood. Trust me, you'll thank us later." Trust her. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "This isn't about gratitude," I said firmly. "It's about respect. You didn't ask me. You didn't give me a choice. That's not how this works." She paused for a moment, and I could practically hear her rolling her eyes through the phone. "Well, there's nothing we can do now," she said dismissively. "The decision has been made. Why don't you focus on being a good neighbor and supporting the community?" Her words left me speechless. Good neighbor. Supporting the community. Was she serious? All I could think about was how violated I felt. This wasn't just a patch of grass. It was our asterisk backyard. Our home. And now, thanks to Karen and her crew, it was being transformed into something we hadn't asked for, hadn't agreed to, and certainly didn't want. As I hung up the phone, tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. I looked out the window again, watching the workers assemble the swing set. Kids would soon be playing there, laughing and shouting, while I stood powerless to stop it. The worst part, I knew this was only the beginning. If Karen could do this, what else was she capable of? The playground was finished within a week. It stood there, bright and colorful, like an unwelcome guest in our backyard. Every time I looked out the window, it felt like a punch to the gut. How could something so cheerful, a place meant for kids to laugh and play, make me feel so angry and powerless? But that's exactly how I felt. Angry at Karen, angry at the HOA, and honestly, a little angry at myself for not being able to stop it. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. This wasn't about swings or slides anymore. It was about principle. They had crossed a line, and if I didn't push back, what would stop them from doing something even worse next time? So I decided to take action. That evening, after Chris got home from work, I sat him down at the kitchen table and told him my plan. "I'm writing a formal complaint," I said, pulling out my laptop. "If they think they can get away with this, they're wrong." Chris frowned, leaning back in his chair. "Do you really think that's going to help? Karen doesn't strike me as someone who cares about complaints." "Maybe not," I admitted, typing furiously. "But I need to try. If nothing else, it'll put it on record that we didn't agree to this, and maybe the other board members will see how unreasonable she's being." By the time I hit send, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe this would be enough to make them reconsider. Maybe they'd realize they'd gone too far and offer some kind of compromise. I didn't expect fireworks, but I hoped for something. Boy, was I wrong. The very next morning, there was a knock at our door. When I opened it, I found Karen standing there, flanked by two other members of the HOA board. Her arms were crossed, and her lips were pressed into a thin line. Behind her, the two board members exchanged uneasy glances, looking more like hostages than allies. "Grace," Karen began, her voice clipped and professional. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral despite the knot forming in my stomach. "This ridiculous complaint you filed." She held up a printed copy of my email, waving it in the air like it was evidence of some crime. "You're causing unnecessary drama. And frankly, it's unacceptable." Unacceptable. My jaw tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. "It's not drama," I said firmly. "You built a playground on my property without permission. That's not acceptable either." Karen sighed heavily, as if explaining something to a child. "As I already told you, it's within the easement zone. Legally, we have every right to use that space for community improvements." "Legally, maybe," I shot back. "But morally, ethically, you don't just take someone's land without talking to them first." Her expression hardened. "This is for the greater good, Grace. Families love amenities like this. It increases property values, brings people together. It's a win-win. For everyone except me," I retorted. "What happens when kids wander onto my actual yard, or when noise becomes an issue? Did you even consider how this might affect us?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. We've thought of everything. Trust me, you're overreacting." Overreacting. The word stung, but I refused to let her see it. Instead, I took a step forward, meeting her gaze head-on. "No, Karen. What's happening here isn't okay. You can't bulldoze your way through people's lives just because you think you know best." For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised, as if she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. Then her mask slipped back into place, smooth and impenetrable. "Fine," she said coldly. "If you want to fight this, go ahead. But don't say I didn't warn you. People around here value harmony. And trust me, they won't appreciate someone stirring up trouble." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her entourage trailing behind her like shadows. As I closed the door, my hands trembled. I knew she was trying to intimidate me, and part of me wondered if she was right. Would my neighbors turn against me? Would they see me as the villain instead of the victim? But another part of me, the stubborn, fiery part, refused to back down. Karen had picked the wrong person to mess with. If she thought I'd roll over and accept this injustice, she had no idea who she was dealing with. After Karen's visit, I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. If I wanted to stand a chance against the HOA, I needed allies. People who understood how wrong it was for them to take over private property without consent. So I started talking to my neighbors. At first, I approached the ones I thought would be sympathetic. There was Mr. Alvarez, the elderly man next door who always waved hello and seemed kind-hearted. Then there was Sarah, a young mom with two kids who lived across the street. She often brought her children outside to play, and we'd exchanged pleasantries more than once. Surely, they'd see reason, right? I began casually, mentioning the playground during small talk. "Hey, have you heard about the new playground in our backyard?" I asked Mr. Alvarez one afternoon while he was watering his plants. He frowned, leaning on his hose. "Yes, I saw it." Quite a surprise, wasn't it? More like a shock, I admitted. They didn't even ask before building it. Doesn't that seem, I don't know, unfair? Mr. Alvarez hesitated, glancing around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "It does," he said quietly. "But people around here don't like rocking the boat. Karen runs things with an iron fist." His words hit home. The more I talked to others, the clearer it became. Fear kept them silent. Most neighbors avoided eye contact or changed the subject when I brought up the issue. A few admitted privately that they agreed with me, but refused to say so publicly. Karen's got eyes everywhere, One woman whispered at the community mailbox, "If you cross her, she makes your life miserable." Even Sarah, despite being friendly, backed away when I pressed her. "I get why you're upset," she said nervously, clutching her toddler's hand. "But the kids love the playground. And honestly, fighting the HOA seems risky." Her hesitation stung, but it also fueled my determination. If everyone was too scared to speak up, then nothing would ever change. Someone had to take a stand, and apparently that someone was me. Still, I wasn't ready to give up on finding support. One morning, I decided to visit Mr. Alvarez again. He'd hinted at knowing Karen's tactics better than most, so I hoped he might offer advice. Sure enough, when I knocked on his door, he invited me in with a warm smile. Over coffee at his kitchen table, he opened up about his own struggles with Karen years ago. "She tried to fine me for planting flowers that weren't on the approved list," he said, shaking his head. "Can you believe that? She thrives on control, Grace. But she's not invincible. You just have to know how to fight back." "How?" I asked, leaning forward eagerly. "What do I do?" He tapped the table thoughtfully. "First, gather evidence. Take photos of the playground, save emails, document everything. Then look into local laws and zoning rules. Sometimes these HOAs step way out of line without realizing it." His guidance gave me hope. For the next few days, I threw myself into research. I studied our neighborhood's HOA agreement, zoning regulations, and even city ordinances. I discovered that the playground violated several rules. It was too close to residential property lines, lacked proper permits, and hadn't undergone required environmental assessments. Armed with this information, I reached out to a lawyer friend of Chris. She agreed to review my case pro bono, offering tips on how to present my findings to the city council. Slowly but surely, I was building a solid argument against Karen and her playground empire. But every victory came with setbacks. Anonymous letters started appearing in our mailbox, accusing me of being anti-community. Someone egged our car late one night, leaving streaks of yellow goo dripping down the windshield. Even Chris grew uneasy, urging me to consider backing off. "Is it worth all this stress?" he asked one evening, his voice tinged with worry. "Yes," I replied firmly. "Because if I don't fight now, what's stopping her from doing something worse later?" Deep down, though, I wondered, was I strong enough to face whatever came next? Things escalated quickly after I started fighting back. Karen wasn't the kind of person to take a challenge lying down, and it didn't take long for her to retaliate. At first, it was subtle, little things designed to make life uncomfortable. Anonymous notes appeared in our mailbox almost daily, each one nastier than the last. "You're ruining the neighborhood," one read. "Why can't you just let people enjoy themselves?" Another sneered. Then came the noise. The playground, which had been relatively quiet during its early days, suddenly became a magnet for activity. Kids screamed and laughed late into the evening, their shouts echoing through our backyard. Parents gathered around, chatting loudly as if they owned the place. It felt like a deliberate attempt to wear me down, to remind me that I was outnumbered and powerless. One night, I snapped. After hours of trying and failing to block out the racket with earplugs and white noise apps, I marched outside in my pajamas. The sight of me startled the parents, who stared at me like I'd interrupted some sacred ritual. "Do you realize what time it is?" I asked, my voice sharp but controlled. "This isn't a public park. It's my property. Could you please keep it down?" The group exchanged uneasy glances before one woman finally spoke up. "It's a playground, ma'am. Kids are supposed to play, and neighbors are supposed to respect each other's space." I shot back. "If your kids want to scream, fine, but maybe do it during daylight hours instead of keeping everyone awake." They muttered apologies, but the damage was done. Word spread fast, and soon I was labeled the mean lady who hates kids. Parents began glaring at me whenever I walked by. Their children mimicked them, whispering behind cupped hands or sticking out their tongues when they thought I couldn't see. Even simple trips to the mailbox felt like walking through a gauntlet of judgmental stares. But the worst part, the vandalism. One morning, Chris and I woke up to find someone had egged our car again, this time smashing the windshield for good measure. Another day, we discovered spray-painted words scrawled across our garage door. Bad neighbor. Each act felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder that standing up to Karen meant making enemies of the entire neighborhood. Chris grew increasingly frustrated. "Grace, this has gone far enough," he said one evening as we cleaned egg yolk off the driveway. "I get that you're mad, but look at what it's costing us. Our car needs repairs, the house looks like a war zone, and half the neighborhood hates us." "I know," I admitted, scrubbing harder than necessary. "But giving in now would mean letting her win. Do you really want to live in a place where someone can take over your land without consequences?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "No, but is it worth losing our peace of mind? Our sense of safety?" His question haunted me. Was it worth it? Every day felt like a battle, against Karen, against the HOA, against the growing hostility from our neighbors. Yet deep down, I knew I couldn't back down. If I did, it wouldn't just be about the playground anymore. It would set a precedent, sending a message that the HOA could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, to anyone they wanted. Determined not to give up, I doubled down on my efforts. I filed a formal complaint with the city council, attaching all the evidence I'd gathered: photos of the playground encroaching on our property, copies of zoning violations, and screenshots of emails proving the HOA hadn't followed proper procedures. I also reached out to local news outlets, hoping to shine a spotlight on the issue. One reporter agreed to write a story, though she warned me it might stir up even more trouble. As the article went live online, the backlash hit hard. Comments flooded in, many accusing me of being selfish and anti-community. Others defended me, calling Karen's actions outrageous and abusive. The neighborhood divided sharply, with some neighbors avoiding me entirely while others quietly offered support. Through it all, Karen remained eerily calm, as if she knew something I didn't. Whenever I saw her, she wore that same smug smile, like she was biding her time until the perfect moment to strike. And then, one afternoon, she knocked on our door. "You've made your point," she said coldly, her arms crossed. "But don't think for a second that this is over. You'll regret crossing me, Grace. Mark my words." Her threat lingered in the air long after she left, leaving me shaken, but still unwilling to surrender. Whatever happened next, I vowed to see this fight through to the end. Karen's threat hung over me like a dark cloud, but I refused to let it paralyze me. If anything, her words only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. It was about setting a precedent, showing the neighborhood that no one, not even the almighty HOA, was above the rules. The city council meeting finally arrived, and I prepared meticulously. I printed out copies of every document I had: photos of the playground encroaching on our property, zoning violation reports, emails proving the lack of proper permits, and even screenshots of Karen's dismissive responses when I tried to raise concerns. I rehearsed what I would say until I could recite it in my sleep. Chris offered to come with me, but I declined. This was something I needed to face alone. When the day came, I walked into the small conference room where the meeting was being held. It wasn't packed, just a handful of council members, some curious neighbors, and, predictably, Karen herself, flanked by 2 other HOA board members. She sat at the back of the room, her lips curled into that familiar smirk, as if she already knew how this would end. The hearing began with the council chair explaining the purpose of the session: to determine whether the playground violated any local ordinances or zoning laws. Karen spoke first, presenting her case with practiced ease. "This project was designed to enhance community spirit," she said smoothly, her tone dripping with sincerity. "It provides a safe space for children to play and strengthens neighborhood bonds. We followed all necessary protocols." I clenched my fists under the table, but forced myself to stay calm. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, took a deep breath, and began laying out my argument. I started with the easement agreement, pointing out that while it allowed limited access, it didn't grant the HOA carte blanche to build whatever they wanted. Then I moved on to the zoning violations, showing how the playground fell within restricted areas, too close to residential property lines. Finally, I presented evidence that the construction hadn't gone through proper permitting processes. "You built this without consulting us," I concluded, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside me. "You took my land without permission, disrupted our lives, and ignored every attempt we made to address the issue peacefully. That's not leadership. That's abuse of power." For a moment, there was silence. The council members exchanged glances, flipping through the documents I provided. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her smug expression faltering slightly. One council member leaned forward and asked her directly, "Did you secure the required permits before beginning construction?" She hesitated, then replied, "We believed we were operating within the guidelines." Her answer seemed to seal the deal. After another hour of deliberation, the council announced their decision. The playground violated multiple zoning regulations and would need to be removed. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful that I nearly stumbled as I sat back down. But the victory felt bittersweet. As the meeting ended, Karen approached me, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "You may have won this round," she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "But don't think this is the end. You'll regret this." I stared at her, refusing to show fear. "I'm not afraid of you, Karen," I said firmly. "What you did was wrong, and now everyone knows it." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving behind an air of tension thick enough to cut with a knife. In the weeks that followed, life in Willow Creek remained tense. While the playground was dismantled, the damage to relationships lingered. Some neighbors continued to treat me like a pariah, blaming me for ruining something their kids enjoyed. Others quietly thanked me, admitting they'd been too scared to stand up themselves. Social gatherings became awkward affairs, with people dividing into factions based on whose side they supported. Even Chris struggled to adjust. "Do you ever wish we'd just let it go?" he asked one evening as we sat on the couch. "Life was simpler before all this." "Maybe," I admitted. "But sometimes doing the right thing means making sacrifices. If I hadn't fought back, who knows what else they might have done." "What kind of example would that set for everyone else?" He nodded slowly, though I could tell he still harbored doubts. So did I, honestly. Winning the battle didn't mean I'd won the war. Karen's parting words echoed in my mind constantly, a reminder that she wouldn't forget or forgive anytime soon. But for now, I chose to focus on the fact that I'd stood my ground. And maybe, just maybe, someone else in the neighborhood would find the courage to do the same someday. Life in Willow Creek hasn't returned to normal. If anything, it feels emptier now. The playground is gone, leaving behind a patch of flattened grass and scattered wood chips that serve as a constant reminder of everything we've been through. Neighbors still cross the street to avoid me, and the once friendly waves have turned into cold stares or outright silence. It's lonely, but I remind myself that not all battles are fought for popularity. They're fought because they're right. Karen keeps her distance these days, though I can feel her watching me from afar. Her threats haven't materialized into anything concrete, but there's an undercurrent of tension whenever we're in the same space. At HOA meetings, which I attend reluctantly, I notice how she glances at me with thinly veiled resentment, like a storm cloud waiting to unleash its fury. Yet, strangely, she hasn't tried anything drastic. Maybe she knows she's on shaky ground now, thanks to the city council's ruling. Or maybe she's biding her time, planning her next move. Chris and I talk often about moving. We both agree this neighborhood isn't the peaceful haven we'd hoped for when we first moved here. "It's not home anymore," Chris said one evening as we sat outside, sipping coffee. "Not after all this." He's right. The warmth and belonging I imagined when we bought the house feel like distant memories now. Instead, there's a lingering unease, a sense that no matter what I do, some people will always see me as the villain. But leaving feels complicated. For one thing, selling our house might not be easy after all the drama. And for another, part of me doesn't want to give Karen the satisfaction of driving us away. Staying puts her on edge, knowing she hasn't truly won. Still, staying comes with its own challenges. Social invitations have dried up completely, and even small interactions at the grocery store or mailbox carry an awkwardness I never expected. Parents who used to chat with me now usher their kids away when they see me coming. It's isolating, yes, but also eye-opening. I realize now how much fear holds people back. Fear of rocking the boat, fear of retaliation, fear of being ostracized. Watching them tiptoe around Karen makes me wonder if anyone else secretly resents her iron grip on the neighborhood. Despite the loneliness, I've found unexpected strength in standing my ground. This fight taught me things about myself I didn't know before. That I'm capable of pushing back against injustice, even when it feels overwhelming. That doing the right thing sometimes means enduring hardship, and that principles matter more than popularity. These lessons are worth holding on to, even if they came at a cost. Mr. Alvarez has become a lifeline during this time. He checks in regularly, offering words of encouragement and reminding me that change takes time. "You've planted a seed, Grace," he told me recently over tea. "Maybe not everyone sees it yet, but someday someone will stand up because you showed them it's possible." His words give me hope. While the immediate aftermath of the playground battle has left scars, perhaps it's also opened the door for others to question the HOA's authority. A few neighbors have started reaching out quietly, sharing their frustrations about Karen's rules and asking for advice on how to push back. It's slow progress, but it's something. As I tend to my garden, reclaiming the backyard bit by bit, I think about what's next. For us, for the neighborhood, for me. Chris jokes that I should run for the HOA board, but I laugh it off. After everything that's happened, I don't think I could stomach another round with Karen anytime soon. But who knows? Maybe one day, when enough people find their voices, we'll see real change in Willow Creek. For now, though, I focus on finding peace within myself. Standing up to Karen wasn't just about protecting my property. It was about proving to myself that I'm stronger than I thought. And while the road ahead might still be rocky, I know I've earned the right to call this place mine. Whatever happens next, I'll face it head on, because letting fear dictate your life is no way to live.